Okay, welcome to the Coach Brew podcast. We are joined today as we kind of rebooting the podcast after what would we call it, a sabbatical of sorts with it. And I'm excited about the guest that we have on today because Val is someone who I think, I'll put it to you this way. He says all the things everyone else is thinking in the world of entrepreneurship and small business ownership, and often are afraid to say. I connected with Val through a software service that I'm assuming invented. Is that accurate, Val?
Yeah. Me and my partners.
So it's called Proof Factor. You can go to prooffactor.com. It's a social proof plugin for e-commerce. It's awesome. We're going to talk more about that as we move forward in the interview. But first, I just want to introduce Val. He's, I think you've started six companies, Val?
That's right, yep.
Proof Factor being number 6, with a couple different results, which we'll dive into in a minute. And, I'd love for you to share, we're going to kind of work chronologically. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your backstory and your background. And then we're going to talk about this evil word that really caught my eye in one of your blog posts. And we're going to tease it a little bit here when I say the word hustle porn. Is that one word or two, by the way, hustle porn?
We usually have it as like a hashtag, so it becomes one word. But
okay,
if you had like an English major here, I think they'd yell at me for that.
So tell us a little bit about kind of how you came into entrepreneurship, your background, and what led you to want to take this crazy ride that we're all on.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the good intro. So I mean, early. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Michigan. Went to school there, University of Michigan. And actually outside of school, when I was graduating, one of my professors there had introduced me to this gentleman that was an entrepreneur himself. And he was an entrepreneur in a more traditional business in the automotive industry. He was like just old school car guy back from the 80s, selling cars day in, day out, working at a dealership, barely had a high school education, didn't have any college or anything like that. He was a really exceptional salesperson, and he sold a bunch of cars, and he was smart with his money, saved it, ended up saving a lot of money, bought a dealership. And then sold a bunch of cars at that dealership and bought another one, and then bought another one, and then bought another one. And by the time I joined, he had 25 dealerships. He was making close to $1 billion in revenue, and was just this sort of, self-made man, sort of pinnacle of success, sort of the American dream sort of scenario. And when I the business for management talent, and my professor introduced me to him, and I ended up joining. And he was the person that I first sort of looked to as a little bit of a mentor, as someone to aspire to be, to sort of understand what they did and how they did it. And that's what really got me into entrepreneurship. What was cool about that is it was interesting. I had graduated from college. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and what year was this?
This was back in 2010.
Okay.
So 9 years ago. Yeah. I had graduated from college and met this gentleman. And even though he had this and was running this really massive company, several thousand employees, he was still very old school about it. And he wanted me to come in and help him with some management work. But he said, Val, I don't want you working in my company unless you know how to sell cars. And so for the first 6-7 months that I was there, I was on the floor at one of his dealerships in Monroe, Michigan, selling cars every single day. And that was a heck of an education, because that's a very quick way to learn sales, to deal with people on a daily basis, and really learn the business at the ground level in a way that you sometimes don't get coming out of school. And it was an awesome education.
I was going to say, Val, and sales in a field where I think people are more suspect and cautious in that profession than any other transaction they engage in, right?
Yes, absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I mean, people will come in. There is sort of this thought that salesperson, they're slightly greasy, they're just trying to you off or put you. I don't think it's always true. There are some salespeople that maybe are not the most ethical people, but you find that in anywhere in the world, in any business environment or even some environments. But people join to dealerships very reserved and very cautious, and so you have to learn how to connect with them on additional level so that they can start trusting you. And if you're a really good salesperson, you're doing a good job connecting with them. You actually help them find the car that's right for them, because the best salespeople there work almost entirely of return business. It's actually a very long process. You sell them one car, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they come back and sell another car, or they refer to a friend. A lot of people don't see that, but that's the right way to do it. But it's hard to get to that point.
I was going to say, you do that when it's done well.
Exactly.
So I think that, in each of our past careers, success for everyone kind of leaves clues. And sometimes we learn, oftentimes we learn from a bad boss, or we learn from a difficult experience. And I think you're in a difficult industry. And I'm curious what you learned, that on that part of your journey that has helped you moving forward.
Right. Great question. And for that part of the journey, because I learned a lot through many, many different parts of the journey, and that part taught me a piece, not all of it, but that part really did teach me about the importance of people. And this is, I hate to almost say it because it's one of those platitudes that everyone always says. People matter, people help make the companies, people help make the business. And it's sort of a cliche at this point, but in my opinion, in my experience, it's a cliche because there's a lot of truth to it. And the people that I worked with were instrumental in making the business what it was. And not just that, but also the customers that I worked with. And knowing how to connect with people very quickly is very important in almost any business role. Even for my current business now, it's all online. But guess what? I'm still one of the guys doing customer service, and being connected with someone online is even more difficult than connecting with in a meaningful way, face to face. And learning how to do that and be able to do that in a way that is transparent, makes someone feel comfortable, but also helps move them forward in a sale is very, very important. And that was the first piece of many that I learned when I was at this dealership group.
So I think this is a good. I think it's a good segue into, some of your other experiences, and I want to come back to that entrepreneurial mentor that you had early on, who was a self-made billionaire, and I'm just curious what the quote hustle factor was for him, in terms of, not necessarily the optics, but just, the grind and maybe the toll that you might have seen, some of that take on him.
Yeah, that's also a great question. There is a very real trade-off that you end up making if you want to be very successful business. And it happens in 95% of cases. Very few people can have both a very good, strong personal life and also have a very good, strong business life. It takes a lot of work to do. And a lot of times you'll see that there are trade-offs. And so this gentleman, his name is Jeff, who owned these dealerships. He was a massive hustler in the sense that he was all about the sales. His motto was sales cures many ills. As long as you're selling enough, it'll cover up a lot of problems in the company. he did. That's the only thing I care about.
Yeah.
He was so singular, so disciplined in selling and making sure that we were selling cars that everything else wasn't just secondary. It was so far down that in his mind, it almost didn't matter. And you know what? In that industry, that worked for him.
Yeah.
But that also meant that, I mean, okay, this is the life this gentleman led. He had like 13 across the U.S. One of them within a 20-minute driving distance of all of his dealerships, and his dealerships are all over the country. And his management style was to get on his jet and fly to each dealership on a monthly basis, different dealership every month. And he would literally just be on the floor selling cars, like right next to the salesperson that was making, one half of what he was making on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
But that's what he did. And that was awesome to see for me with him and me with him. I was like, wow, I work side by side with this guy that, a company worth literally billions of dollars. But when you don't have a place that yes, these 13 homes, but if you're not settled down anywhere, it's hard to have a family, it's hard to have kids, it's hard to sort of build that life as well. So that was a trade-off that he made, and I think he made it, frankly, pretty gladly, but it was a real trade-off. But his level of hustle and commitment to just straight sales was absolutely incredible. And it was eye-opening to internalize the dedication you have to a singular goal to make it happen. And he did that. He embodied that almost to where you could almost call sales. He was selling all day, every day.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like workaholism to me.
Yes.
And I think that, many entrepreneurs are almost predisposed to workaholism. And then others, people who get into entrepreneurship or start a small business don't really realize how much it takes in terms of time, effort, energy, work ethic. And because they want to make it work, they train themselves to become workaholics, right. Which, then we wonder why, and I believe you had the statistic, 31% of entrepreneurs fear they're going out of business. Mm-hmm. Because they're grinding and grinding and grinding. It's often lonely, and you're often either traveling or you're at the office before everyone gets in, after everyone leaves. Obviously, because there's much more of an emotional investment with the owner than with an employee. Let's just dive right into this. What really led you to want to commission a study and have a research group study mental health, stress, depression in entrepreneurship and small business ownership?
Yeah, that's great. And you sort of, touched on it. Part of this is starting a business is lonely, because even though you are surrounded with people that you work, times you're trying to work towards a similar goal and you're trying to lead these people, there's not always a great way to share these sort of internal thoughts, feelings, and struggles that you have as the business. And I've been through that several times, and it's one of those things that's not talked about. Yeah. And when when we had started Proof Factor, my partners and I, and we had talked about, okay, who are we serving and what are they thinking? How can we help them? Okay, Proof Factor as a product or service, it's great. It's a great plugin, it's all these great things, but it's also thinking about the other side of the coin, where it's like we're working with small, medium businesses here. A lot of people are first-time entrepreneurs, they're first-time business owners. I've been through that enough to know that, especially the first time that you do it, you're basically just juggling all these balls and you're trying not to let anything drop. And every time something happens, it's like another ball gets added, and it gets harder and harder. And there's no one to turn to a lot of times. Or there might be resources out there, but you just don't know them. So, if you're ignorant to the resources, then they might as well not be out there because you don't have, you're not going to end up using them. And so we said, okay, let's commission the study and see how people feel, because we know how we feel and we've been through it. Let's see if this is how other people feel as well. And it turns out that, there's quite a lot of people that do fear that they might go out of business. And it's a real thing, and we've seen it, we've felt it, and just having it out there, we thought would help encourage conversation like this.
And, it's interesting because it's not talked about, and literally a third of entrepreneurs worry about going out of business, which if you look at, and you guys did a wonderful job crunching the data, I'll link to your blog post on it. That adds up to 10 million entrepreneurs across the country.
Right.
And that's not a small number. But no one talks about it. And what they tend to focus their energy on are optics, or as I like to call it, keeping up appearances. We want to look like we're doing well. We want to look like we feel good. We want to look like things are going great and, nothing's phasing us. But in reality, they're worried about keeping the lights on, how they're going to make payroll, a host of other things. Can you talk to us a little bit about, just how you saw kind of these optics rear their ugly head? And you do a great job breaking down, the typical social media post, #hustleporn, what that looks like. I'd love it if you could take us through, take all our listeners through that and what one of those typical memes tends to look like. Because, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are sold a false bill of goods that, so many of us are doing so great, and then they feel inferior by comparison.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, one of the survey respondents, and we saw this over and over again, had said, then into my family that we went under. And that's part of that optics. That's part of trying to keep up some sort of appearance of success. And this, this hustle porn culture that we like to call it, and it's a coined term by an entrepreneur famous out here in San Francisco. It's very real. There are, frankly, people that are out there preying on this, because starting your own business, being an entrepreneur, I mean, frankly, it's hot right now, and it's being billed as something that anyone can do. And I think fundamentally anyone can do it, but the risks and the challenges and the ups and downs of it aren't talked about. And so a lot of people that maybe if they had the right mentality, approach coaching, they could potentially do it and do it successfully. Instead, they're coming into this without having their eyes wide open. They're coming into this having unrealistic expectations. They're coming into this not what it takes and what the trade-offs are, what they may have to give up to get it done. And they're coming into this not thinking, what if I fail? Part of hustle porn is this sort of mentality, and you talk about these hustle porn memes. I see these on all the time. I see these on YouTube as ads before I watch videos now, where there's this random person, luxury supercar like a Lamborghini in the background or a tropical home, and there's a quote by a famous person about how if you work hard, you'll get it. Yeah, hard work is part of it, but hard work's not the only part of it. There's so much that goes into running a successful business. You have to have the right product to make a product that people actually want and want to buy. You have to find those people that want to buy it and reach them in a way that they end up making that purchase, whether it's a product or a service or whatever the case might be. And then you have to do that profitably. And probably it's not just, on a unit economic basis, not just for the product itself, but for the business as a whole. If you have overhead like office space or employees or all these other things. And they have to do that sustainably over time. That's really hard to do. And that takes a lot of hard work, but it also takes a lot of other things to go right. And so hustle porn plays down the risks that are associated, plays down the other aspects of what it takes to run a hustle business.
Yeah.
And that's really where I believe it's damaging entrepreneurship, because people end up getting burned out on it, and they end up failing. And I mean, my first company, I mean, this was me. I was the person that bought into the hustle porn. And I thought I was a smart individual. I thought I could outwork everyone. I thought I could do things. And I started a company 2.5 years after I graduated college. I left the job at the dealership group with friends from college, all smart guys. We had saved some money. We were going to company together. We thought we could take on the world, because that's what we were told. Work hard, be smart, and you're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Well, we weren't. And at the end of 1.5 years, I didn't know how I was going to pay rent. And that's the reality of it. That's actually what happened. To think, what if this works? What's happened then? Because with hustle porn, you're taught there's no to make it work. If you back yourself into a corner, you'll figure something out. Well, no, that's actually not how business works.
How about all you have to do is work harder, right?
Yeah. Work. As if and the thing about work harder is that it's this sort of very flimsy saying that there's no benchmark that you can sort of pin it against. It's just work harder. You can always work harder. Sure, you can, but in the end, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you're not working 24 hours in a day. We've done the it's completely unhealthy.
You're breaking up there. I can't hear you. Could you repeat yourself?
Yeah. Is that a little better, or is that?
You just cut out. What were you saying? You've done the
I was saying we've done we've done the work harder thing. We've done the let's drink a Red Bull and eat ramen noodles so that we can stay at the office until 2 a.m. every day. But that's it. It just doesn't work. You're unhealthy. You're more tired. When you're more tired, you make more mistakes. You end up having like a rebound the next day, where the next day is completely tired through it. And so the whole just work harder thing is it's not realistic. You have to work hard, but just work harder is so unrealistic.
Yeah. And there's a difference between working harder and working smarter, and anyone that's taken economics knows that whole principle, the point of diminishing returns. Intellectually, we know that, but emotionally, sometimes that just doesn't register for entrepreneurs. And some of it is, I think, a lot of the online gurus just frankly shaming people, and shaming people maybe to monetize whatever they're peddling. It's astounding to me how many online gurus are, as you had mentioned, taking a picture with a Lamborghini in the background, or a Learjet. And I just wonder if, like, after they get done having their little sister record that on their iPhone, the actual owner of the vehicle says, "Hey, get the hell away from my car." There are a lot of people teaching success who actually haven't had that success or haven't built a business, and they're really just kind of predatory, preying on entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs' insecurities or failures. And it doesn't help that there's some celebrities out there who just bang the drum of work harder, and you see the work habits of Gary Vaynerchuk or an Elon Musk, who work 16-hour days and are up at 3 a.m. responding to email. And they're also saying you just have to work harder. You just have to bust your ass. And, that's all well and good when you have a staff of, 100 people that you can delegate everything to. Sure, Elon Musk, you can, your output, your production is going to be far greater than someone who's, a small startup in a small town, or, whatever the case may be. Can you share with me, just a little bit about how your blog posts have sort of kind of taken I don't know, kind of uncovered or taken the veil off of the the unrealistic optics. What kind of response have you gotten from folks? I mean, obviously you got a response from me. I wanted to have you on my podcast. I reposted your blog articles. I said, this is the thing that everyone's thinking and no one's saying. What have some other business owners, shared with you?
Yeah. Also a great question. And that really hit the intent of do this study, is to start a conversation. And I want to start a conversation with the customers that we have at Proof Factor, because I think I mentioned to you earlier, part of Proof Factor is this product and do all these things, but also because customers are these small and medium-sized businesses, owners that are just starting out, we wanted to reach out to them and sort of let them know that it's okay to talk about these things. Let them know that we've been through this and that we can and should have incredible, especially after we got written up in. So we sent it out to customers and we got stories and stories and of these entrepreneurs that have been in business for 2, 3, 4 years. Now now they have revenues of $2, $3, $4, $5 million annually. First year, the first 2 years, they didn't know what they were doing, and they were struggling, and they didn't have anyone to turn to. And they back and said, "Wow, I mean, I have this email. I'll write a blog post about it. We'll do an interview with them on our blog." But they said, "Wow, when I first started my business, so I knew I was not alone."
Yeah,
and giving someone that almost permission to talk about this in a health is a good thing. And I want to say in a health way because, here in San Francisco, my last company that I started was venture. We raised about we got 30 plus employees. Even here in San Francisco, that a lot of people see as being the epicenter of entrepreneurship, there's still a very unhealthy mentality of starting. And interesting, in a way, failure is almost fast. Or there's another famous motto, it's fail fast. Because from failure you learn.
Okay.
Almost where, like with hustle, almost encourages failure almost, and that is also unhealthy because it can actually show you, okay, what does it mean when you fail? What does it mean when you shut down a company of 30 people when they're relying for their paycheck, for their benefits, providing for their families?
Yeah.
And so talking about failure there's a lot of physical stress that happens because of it. We thought it was really important, and that's what we wanted to encourage. And that's what we've seen through dozens of emails that we've gotten back, both from our customers and people that read the Forbes article that just emailed us cold.
Absolutely. It's it's interesting. I liken entrepreneurship to comedy, and here's what I mean by that. Stand-up comedians, funny as they may be, and their livelihood is made by entertaining and making people laugh, often are depressed, and a lot of their comedy comes from a dark place, but that's never talked about. And a lot of them recently, with mental health being at the forefront of some social issues in our country, recently a lot of comics are starting to go to counseling, starting to see a psychologist, starting to find a way to get to a better place, in their own head. And, that's now becoming socially acceptable. There's some comedy clubs who have like a counselor on staff as, available to, their comics. And wouldn't it, I liken entrepreneurship to comedy in that it's not talked about, it's very prevalent, depression. And wouldn't it be nice if, that was, mental health as opposed to mental illness was a little more embraced, whether it's coaching, counseling, therapy, whatever it is, having someone to talk to. It's great to have a mentor as a sounding board, but that's not the same as being able to go see a mental health professional. Do you think we'll ever get to that place? And the reason I asked that is I look at your article as like, the great reveal and, a lens through which to view this to try and help us get to a better place collectively.
Also a great question. And I think that what I've seen being here is that we are actually a little bit moving towards that here in Silicon Valley. And hopefully I can't speak for the rest of the country or the rest of the world, but I'm seeing a little bit here in Silicon Valley. And that's much to the credit of successful founders that have come out and spoken up about this and have mentioned that even in success, there are so many trials and tribulations, and it's not, the same cliche of like having overnight success. You're never an overnight success, unless you win the lottery. And even through that, there's so many challenges. And we build up the entrepreneur to be this strong-willed individual that can never be knocked down and is always going to grind through it and just work harder, like you mentioned earlier. And people have come out and said that's actually not how it is. And I have entrepreneur friends now that do go to counseling actively, even when there's no problem. They go to counseling just so they have that habit and they have someone to talk to and in some cases vent with or just reflect with and have these conversations. And it's becoming more acceptable. And frankly, the most important people to convince are, especially here in Silicon Valley, are the money people, the venture capitalists, that they become okay with it and they don't see it as a sign of weakness for entrepreneurs. So I think that's where a lot of this comes from.
Sure.
The entrepreneurs or the business owners, whether you're getting a loan from a bank, whether you're getting money from venture capitalists, whether you're doing financing in some other method, you want to come off to this person with the money. You have to want to come off from a strong position. And part of that is personal as well, not just your business.
Yeah, and the irony of that is the person with the money's every bit as, excuse my French, every bit as fucked up as the rest of us, right?
Yes. Well, that's the key right there. Realizing that to some degree we're all fucked up a little bit.
Yeah.
We could all use a little bit of help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the one thing I realized we forgot to do is take people through the recipe for hustle porn.
Yes.
And I have it in front of me. I don't know if do you know it? Is it top of mind? Do you want to rattle it off for everybody, or for the sake of accuracy, should I walk people through it?
I can rattle it off because I've seen it so much that at this point it's something that is almost second nature to me.
So and this is where this stems from. If you do a quick search for #hustle on like Instagram or any social media, it shows 19 plus million posts just like this recipe Val's about to give you, folks. So fire away, Val.
So first thing we want to do is figure out what kind of background that we want. And my personal favorite background is Al Pacino in Scarface. Obviously, everyone knows Al Pacino in Scarface. He's the epitome of hustling and being a self-made man. Pick a celebrity, pick an athlete, pick Al Pacino in Scarface, or if you're more of a car guy, maybe some Lamborghini or something like a tropical home. Just pick a really nice background that just has all that wealth feeling to it. Second thing, find a quote. Again, guess what? Scarface, really, really good quotes in there. They're awesome. The Rich and Famous, they're very quotable. You can pick something out from there. Or you can just have something as simple as, I'll teach you to be rich. Layer that on top of a Lamborghini, people eat that up all day.
And the person doing that could even be dirt poor.
Exactly. Yeah, this isn't about reality. This is about what you're trying to show as reality.
Yep.
Last piece, make sure you write a really great tear-jerking story about how you hustled harder than everyone else around you, and now you're making 7 figures a second because you're just smart and worked so hard, and that for the low price of $29.99 a month, you'll teach me how to be rich also. And then
go to 6 figures in 6 weeks.
Exactly.
Sleeping on a park bench.
Exactly. Because it's just that easy.
Yeah.
And then don't forget to ask these people for a follow or a share, because otherwise, how else are you going to market your brand?
And the irony of that is, if you were really that big time, would you have to ask for follows, likes, and shares, or would they just naturally happen organically, right?
That's always the funniest thing for these sorts of people. I wonder if you're really making 7 figures a month, doing whatever it is you're doing. I think we know about you, man.
Yeah, you'd be a household name like Warren Buffett.
Exactly. You'd be like Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett or Mark Zuckerberg. I don't think that you'd have to be, portraying this lifestyle, this flashy lifestyle of material possessions.
And this is a nice segue, Val, because there's optics and keeping up appearances. Whether it's like you've got it all together as an entrepreneur, or if it's just the optics of like you're selling a lot, you're making a lot of money, you're doing great. And then there's reality. Then there's proof.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about proof factor, because proof factor is a little bit of a bullshit detector for a lot of people's websites.
Yep.
And it exposes like, you know what? Here's how much you're really selling.
Yes. And that's a big part of it. The challenge, the genius and the challenge of the internet is that online you can be anyone.
Yep.
And on one side, that's liberating because it allows you to really be yourself and go out there and do great things.
Or catfish people.
Exactly. But on the other side, there's the catfishers. And there's so many places out there that, they take advantage of the fact that the internet is frankly pretty anonymous.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons we created Proof Factor was to help provide that social proof, that real social proof of, okay, are you actually selling on your website? And if you are, that's great. That helps encourage additional sales because people see your website, they know it's trustworthy, they can see who's buying, they can see all that kind of
they can see what people are buying too, like what's popular.
Exactly. And with that, it helps people sort of make their own decisions and basically know that they can trust you as a website. And then there's the people that are, basically trying to scam people, or they're selling products that they don't stand behind, products or services that they don't stand behind. And those people aren't going to be selling. And that's one of the reasons we built Proof Factors to help differentiate those websites.
And I think it couldn't come at a better time because this is the day and age we live in. I just read an article in Business Week or Bloomberg. I'm trying to remember which one, but it exposed the fact that something like 60% of the internet's traffic is fake. It's just bots and like click farms or whatever you call them. And so they've exposed that. And we're also learning today that, you can buy Amazon reviews. You can buy, 1 million Twitter followers and Facebook fans and things like that. So, again, there's all these different optics where it actually looks like it's the illusion of proof.
Yes.
And there's a way to game the system. But the beauty of what you do is that there's no illusion. It is stone cold, hard sales or crickets chirping on, that little pop-up isn't popping up. It's one or the other. There's no gaming that system. Right. And, in a time when trust is at an all-time low, like just not in society in general, but even more so online, you've created a resource that allows people to really see legitimacy in someone's website, their e-commerce store, whatever it is, which I think is really that's the front door. That's the welcome mat to someone's business today.
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And that's part of why we built it the way we built it. I hope that it was easy to install for you. It should be pretty much close to a couple clicks, but we integrate directly with WooCommerce, Shopify, the other big e-commerce players, and we pull the data directly from their sales data. Yep. So that there's no shady business going on with people making fake purchases or fake whatever. And that's part of it, because like you said, there's a lack of trust in society right now. And this is a small way for us to do something about it, but at least we're doing something about it.
I think it's a big way, personally. Yeah. I think you're underselling it and being humble. But yeah, I think it's huge, and I think it speaks to, authenticity, which is what your articles speak to, and just how much it's resonated, not just with me, but with so many other people who have reached out to you in response. Can you talk to us a little bit just about this organization that you worked with to commission the study? How you found them and how they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with an organization called Nonfiction. It's a research institution that, really does surveys and studies like this. I found it through a friend of mine. I've done similar studies before at my last company, and we found that there's certain topics out there that people sort of know deep down internally, but no one really talks about, and no one has really quantified that topic. And so Nonfiction, these guys are really great. They're exceptional, have done studies like this before, and they're really good at asking the right questions from survey respondents to help quantify how people are feeling. Because the challenge when you do a study like this is, how do you turn an emotion or a fear into something that you can count? And so survey design, actually, it's a whole science, and it's something that being good at really, really helps. And so we worked with Nonfiction to commission this, and we told them this exact thing. I think we put this in our survey or the blog, just so it's very clear. We as Proof Factor don't want to have any input on the outcome of this. Yeah. We're trying to find, what is it that entrepreneurs, what is it that small business people actually feel? Please do this for us, then give us the results. And they did a great job for us. Highly recommend them.
Yeah, and how people feel. It's physical and emotional issues. It's embarrassment, panic, downright panic in some cases.
Yeah. And that was one of the things we really appreciated, is that they did a great job of following up with survey respondents and getting these quotes about them to figure out, how do you actually feel about this? Whether it's something like, one of the gentlemen that we talked to had mentioned that, he was getting heart palpitations about going out of business. That's a very real physical thing. Some people had regret that they threw so much time and money away. And being able to just talk about that and have those very real quotes of people really being vulnerable is important, because I felt those same things.
Absolutely. It talked about internal and external factors, and a couple of the internal factors. And I think that that whole inner game is where when we're in our own head, we're behind enemy lines, so to speak. Yes. And I think that whole inner game is really what messes with a lot of us. And when I read some of those quotes from some of the survey respondents, like the first one that I read was, "No one wants what I'm selling." And I thought, I think that every time I launch a new book, is anyone going to buy the damn thing? Or is it just going to be like my mom ordering a copy? And so I think we all have a version of that narrative in our head. And then, another one was the deck seems stacked against small business in this day and age. There are a lot of opportunities to start a business, but not everyone can stay in business. And, again, I just want to applaud you for, saying the things that everyone's thinking and are often afraid to say, or previously were afraid to say, because of the optics and the keeping up appearances. And on a personal note, just reading your article and seeing the survey results and having our conversations that we've had has pushed me to, first of all, kind of recalibrate and think about, how much time have I spent trying to make something perfect when there's no such thing as perfect, and it was a waste of time. I could have spent it doing something else, building my business in another way, or spending more time with my family. And you've made me recalibrate. So, for example, I'm rebooting this podcast, and some of them won't have the beautiful intro and outro music, or commercials, or earlier our mic. I think your mic, we had a bad Wi-Fi signal. The mic cut in and out a little bit. We're not going to redo it. We're not going to go back and fix it, because I think that indirectly and maybe unintentionally, trying to fix a lot of those things contributes to the optics and the keeping up of appearances. Like, nothing's ever going to be perfect for any of us, and perfect is the enemy of done.
Yes.
And so, I want to thank you, because you've caused me to really kind of reflect and recalibrate on a lot of stuff as a result of this whole experience and your research. So thank you.
Thanks, John. That was really, really nice. That was really, really nice. And I mean, the reason I'm on the podcast and as willing to do it is because I think that what you are doing is you're doing this the right way. You're not taking the guru approach of, oh, hustle harder, work harder, it's easy and everyone can do it. Let's have these polished videos. But it's I hate to use this word. Sometimes it's been overused, but it is authentic, and it's based on your experience, and it's based on 20 plus years of experience, and there's value in that. And that's why I'm on here now, and I'm happy that we're able to chance to connect.
Awesome. What's the best way that people can get in touch with you if they want to share their experience in this whole hustle harder, conundrum, or if they want to, check out Proof Factor? I know they can go to prooffactor.com. Is that where you want to direct people? How can we stay in touch with you?
Prooffactor.com is probably the easiest way. We have a little chat on all the pages, and I still man those 30% of the time at least. So I'm usually on there. Also, my Proof Factor email is public, Val, V-A-L, at prooffactor.com. If you have a story, if you want to reach out, if you want to talk, if you just want to vent for a half hour about your business, do reach out. And I'm pretty good about responding to these things specifically, because I've been there and I know what it feels like many, many times. And I've been fortunate enough to have some successes, but also some really massive failures. And so happy to talk through all of that. And if you want to share your story, please do let me know. Val at prooffactor.com, or come to Proof Factor. There's about a 30% chance that if you're chatting with someone on prooffactor.com, it's me.
Awesome. And I can testify to that, because I think within 15 minutes of reaching out via email to Val at prooffactor.com, I got a reply. And you're like, hey, awesome. I'm really glad you shared that with me. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you. So absolutely, that's coming from a place of authenticity as well. Again, want to thank you for jumping on the podcast with me, and we'll continue the conversation for sure.
Likewise. Thanks, John. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Val.